Hello everybody and welcome to yet another A+ 1102 course/lesson with a practice exam at the end. So I'm going to take you through everything you need to know about this particular exam objective and this particular dot point. Today we're doing exam objective 1.1 and we're specifically looking at feature differences. There are going to be a few things in here we've covered already, but it never hurts to cover them more than once and get really down into the details. And at the end of this, I'm going to give you, as usual, those practice questions that will help you figure out whether or not you're ready to take the real thing. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get straight into it. We're going to go ahead and start with domain access versus a work group. What does this actually mean? You will need to know the difference between these two for your exam 100%. And the good thing for you is I'm going to simplify it so that it's going to be pretty easy to understand. And I want you to really try to remember these for the questions at the end because there's going to be a couple of questions on these. So first things first, what is a domain, or what does domain access refer to? So a domain is a centralized authentication and security management for user accounts, computers, and resources. So it's a centralized method of managing a wide variety of different machines and different accounts, essentially. So if you're connected to a domain, that means that there's generally going to be some kind of administrator that can do changes to your user account over the network. So if the administrator needs to change something about Bob's user account, he could do that over the network. And simultaneously, if he needs to, or similarly, I should say, if he needs to change something about Stacy's user account over here, he can do that over the network as well. He has control over all of the different machines and the user settings across the network through the domain. It's almost like you're in the matrix, as this image kind of shows here. You're among the ones and zeros. You have complete control and complete power over all the ones and zeros. So it requires a domain controller or a server to manage user accounts and group policies. And it's used in, as I said, larger organizations for better security and centralized control. So just understand that a domain is essentially a method to manage a large variety of user accounts across a large organization. Now, that for your exam is going to be contrasted or compared to a work group, which is this image we have over here on the right. So it's a more simple peer-to-peer network for a small number of computers. So you can see here, we have a multiple, 4 here in this image, different devices, and they're all directly connected to one another, right? So this one can share information with this one, it can share information with this one, it can share information with this one, but they are really individual machines, right? So they need to be individually configured and they need to be individually set up. There is no central management server. There is no central form of managing all of these. They are individual computers, but they're connected to each other as part of a small little work group, a small little peer group. They can share files with each other, but there's no central management. That's going to be the key theme. So again, there is no central authentication server in a work group. User accounts and security settings are managed on each individual computer. So I've already kind of gone over that, but on each individual computer, it's managed individually. There's no over the network through a centralized server controlling the group policies or the user accounts, anything like that. They are easier to set up, but less secure than a domain. As you can imagine, in a domain, right, the first one we talked about, you can give out a wide variety of policies to the entire organization. But here in a work group, you need to configure each device individually. With configuring a device individually, each time you're configuring, there's room for error. But if you're doing it over a network, you can make sure every device has the exact same settings. It's a lot easier to do, a lot more secure. So hopefully that made sense for you. We're going to move on to desktop style / user interface. This one's pretty simple, right? There's really not a lot to this. You have a wide variety of different types of desktops you can potentially choose from. You have a modern or Metro start screen with the tiles for launching applications and accessing settings, as we can see here. You have the typical desktop user interface, which you can see here. And then you also have tablet mode if you have an iPad or a tablet or anything like that. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And of course, your user account can personalize their experience by customizing the themes, backgrounds, and taskbar settings within the different user interface or desktop styles. So in relation to your exam, what you might be asked for this is simply like, Marcus is using an iPad. Which desktop style best suits him? it's going to be tablet, because an iPad is a tablet. You're not going to use a standard computer desktop setup on an iPad, because iPad's about that big. It's not really going to work. Or Jenny is utilizing a desktop computer, which user interface might work better for her. It's going to be pretty intuitive. I don't want you to spend a lot of time thinking about this particular dot point. All right, just understand the different types that there are and be able to recognize what they are and when you might use each. This one is really, really important for your exam. We've covered it in the last video, but we're going to cover it here again just because it is really important for you to understand the availability of Remote Desktop Protocol, or RDP, as they may simply refer to it in your exam. So Remote Desktop Protocol allows users to remotely connect to another computer for accessing files and applications, or also simply, controlling that computer over a network too. The availability of RDP, it is fully available in Windows Pro for workstations, and Enterprise, which means you can be a client or a host. You can connect to someone else's computer, or someone else's computer can connect to you. You can go both ways. However, Windows 10 Home, your device can only act as a client. You can connect to someone else, but you cannot be connected to, okay? That's the important distinction you'll need to understand for your exam. It's clearly laid out in the exam objectives that you will need to know that, so make sure you're aware of that difference. Random access memory support limitations for the different versions of Windows 10 that you'll need to know for your exam are as follows. We did cover this in the last video, but we're covering it again just to really make sure we got it down pat. So we have Windows 10 Home is limited to a maximum of 128 gigabytes of RAM. Windows 10 Pro supports a maximum of 2 terabytes of RAM, and then you have Pro for workstations and Enterprise both support a maximum of 6 terabytes of RAM. So that is going to be really important for you to know that for your examination. You may be asked a wide variety of questions. There will be a question on that at the end of this video, so stick around and make sure you paid attention there. Now we also have BitLocker. Covered this again previously, but we'll cover it again now. So BitLocker encrypts the entire drive for data security, making sure all of your data, all of your files are safe. It is available in all versions of Windows outlined here that you'll need to know for your exam, except for Windows 10 Home. Windows 10 Home is the only one out of the versions of Windows 10 that you need to know for your exam that does not have BitLocker. So again, you'll need to know that in order to be able to answer questions on your exam relating to the differences between Windows 10 versions and their features. Of course, a benefit is it protects your data from unauthorized access, even if the physical storage device is stolen. So someone might steal your device, but they can't get in because BitLocker is encrypting it, right? So they have access to your physical device, but unless they can have the encryption key or somehow decrypt that, they are not going to have access to your data. So that's why that's a good thing. The final one for this video is GPEdit. So the Group Policy Editor, or GPEdit.msc. So what that means in brackets is if you pull up your terminal, you likely won't be able to do this because you probably have Windows 10 Home, but you would simply type in gpedit.msc and that would give you access to this tool, the Group Policy Editor. If you have Windows 10 Home, it's not available, so you'll get a message something similar to this, which brings me to the next point. Again, just like the last two, this is only unavailable in Windows 10 Home. Windows 10 Pro for workstations, and Enterprise editions do have availability of the Group Policy Editor. It is only Windows 10 Home where that is not available. So make sure you know that for your exam as well. And make sure you know what it does. So what does it do? It allows administrators to configure various settings for user accounts, computers, and network resources. So you're editing the group policies, right? to put simply. So as an administrator, you can configure the settings for user accounts for different computers and for network resources as well over the network. So it allows you to administer group policy changes as an administrator. Administer them as an administrator. Yes. Okay. Now it's time for some questions. We've got a couple for you here today, and it's going to give you an idea of the kind of questions that you might get for your exam. So strap in. I'll give you a moment to prepare, take a breath, and let's go. Question number 1 reads, you are setting up a home network with 2 computers to share files and a printer. There is no central server managing user accounts or security. Users must log into each computer individually. This scenario describes A, a domain, B, a hubbed network, C, a peer-to-peer network, or D, a secure network. Your answer coming in 3, 2, 1. Now, the answer is a peer-to-peer network, another word for a work group, right? That's another term for it. So the key things here, right? There was no central server managing user accounts or security. In a domain, you have a central server managing these things. In a work group, you don't. They're simply connected to each other, as we stated before, and individual logins. Users must log into each computer individually. There's no centralized user management system. So in a domain, you will likely be logging into an authentication server, which will authenticate you to the network. However, in a work group, you're simply logging into that device as an individual, right? There's no domain managing your user account. You're just logging into that device. So that's why that was wrong. Now, hopefully that made sense. We'll get into the next question, which reads, a company with hundreds of employees has a central server that manages user accounts, permissions, and security policies for all computers. This allows for centralized administration and control. This describes A, a work group, B, a man network, C, a domain, or D, a local network. 3, 2, 1. Here's your answer. Pause the video if you need more time. A domain. So again, this question discussed centralized management. So there was a central server managing user accounts, permissions, and security policies. That's what we're looking at when we're talking about a domain. That's central management. And again, large scale is always a giveaway. If a company has hundreds of employees, it's going to be better to have a domain because that gives you a way of centrally managing all of the devices. You don't want to have to walk around to each of the devices individually and log in. It's going to take forever if you need to make any kind of changes. It's much better to have a domain and be able to just do those changes across the network, sometimes to multiple users or multiple machines at a time. It's just more efficient and it's better. The other answers, we had a man network. This is just an unrelated term that you might recognize from your 1101. It's a metropolitan area network, which is simply a network spanning a larger geographical area that usually connects multiple city-sized work groups. So like if you have multiple buildings from the same business, that would be a man and they're connected to each other, usually through a fiber connection, generally speaking. And then a local network is a type of network, but it doesn't relate to the question specifically. It's similar to a man, right? So a local network is just a network connecting devices within a limited physical area. So you've got your wide area network, and then everything in your home on your side of the router is part of your local area network. That is really more 1101, but just to explain what those terms were, right? That you should remember that stuff from your 1101. Okay, the next question reads, you are in the process of recommending a Windows version to a client when they tell you they plan to install 2 terabytes of RAM in their system. Additionally, they do not necessarily intend on performing any extremely intensive tasks with their machine, such as video editing or data processing. Which version of Windows 10 should you recommend to them based on this information? A, Windows 10 Home. B, Windows 10 Pro. C, Windows 10 Pro for Workstation. Or D, Windows 10 Enterprise. Your answer coming in 3, 2, 1. Pause the video if you need more time. Here we go. Your answer is B, Windows 10 Pro. Now the key giveaways here were in the specifics of what they required, as they usually will be. The client planned RAM capacity, they wanted to do 2 terabytes, right? And Windows 10 Pro is the only one that can account for 2 terabytes. Windows 10 Pro for workstations down here can do for 6 terabytes, but that's a bit overkill, particularly when you consider that in the question it specified they do not intend to do any intensive work such as video editing or anything to that effect. So they only need 2 terabytes, and going overboard to 6 terabytes is just too much. You don't need that. So we only needed 2 terabytes, which Windows 10 Pro is perfectly good for, especially considering it said they don't want to do any work intensive things. Same thing for Windows 10 Enterprise, 6 terabytes there. No mention of managing a wide variety of machines within a particular organization, which is what you might want Enterprise for. If there was mention of that, sure, but there wasn't. So there's no need to go Enterprise. So that's a good example of the kind of questions you might get for your exam. Now, look, if you enjoyed this video, you liked the way it was broken down, not only by exam objective, but by dot point, each dot point within that exam objective, you will love my learning guide over at journeytocyber.com. Head over there, click on the A+ 1102 exam, go to view resources, and you'll get a good look at my learning guide where you can grab the learning guide, which has comprehensive notes telling you everything you need to know about every topic for the A+ 1102 exam, broken down not only by, as you can see here, if you zoom in, learning exam objective, but also by each dot point within exam objective. For that, you get comprehensive notes, you get active recall questions, and practice exam questions, similar to what you saw here in this video today. This was just a small snippet of what's available in the learning guide. Once you finish that, you can head over to the online quiz database here and have your hand at some simulated exam experiences. Now, here's what people have said about my previous learning guides. They've said, your learning guide is actually goated. I don't comment a lot, but it helps with organized information and helps me piece things together more easily. Thank you so much. Update, your notes helped me pass my test today. I downloaded your learning guide already, and I can see it will help immensely with studying. I tried other popular resources, but struggled absorbing the material. Will you have one for the 1102? Hey, that's what this is for. Get your hands on it. So as I said, you've got the table of contents there showing you roughly how in detail it is broken down, which is quite a lot of detail. You got your comprehensive notes and you got your online quiz section, and the practice questions that we had here in this video today are just a snippet of that. I also have performance-based questions as well if you want to get your hands on those. Take note, this is Australian dollars, so if you're on the US, which most of you are, it'll be like probably around half that for you guys, so it's really cheap. That being said, journey@cyber.com for all that. You'll be as happy as that guy if you go there. Not necessary though, right? You got these free videos. That's just if you want something extra. If you want access to all the material right now, you don't want to wait for the next video, head there. Otherwise, I will see you later.